Hey, what's up, everybody? This is episode number 35, and this episode is the review on the sequel to Frankenstein. And this one is titled The Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. This movie got a 98% on Rotten Tomato. The original Frankenstein got 100% on Rotten Tomato, a distinctive honor. And let me tell you, there's a reason why that movie got 100%, because it's done well from beginning to end, 1 hour and 13 minutes. This movie is 1 hour and 19 minutes, and it got 98%. Those movies are high scores because it's just done very well from beginning, middle, and end. It's a coherent story. The director doesn't do too much, and he is able to tell a story with Boris Karloff leading the charge as the monster who returns to sort of try to gain a sense of understanding in the world that wants to destroy him. The Bride of Frankenstein is it's scary, but it also tells stories of life, themes of life. And one of the themes of life is loneliness and trying to find love in this world. Everybody could tell you that it's not easy being lonely, and it's not easy finding love in this world. There's millions and millions and millions of people around the world, but yet there are lonely souls that roam this world every single day and night, that sleep alone every day and night, trying to find that companion that suits their soul and their love. And when you look at it in this movie, the director exploits this completely. The Bride of Frankenstein, after getting into a heated battle with his monster, the monster is able to survive in a very miraculous way, I may add. He finishes off 2 people in the movie, which you'll find out. I'm not going to tell you who they are in the movie. And he quickly is wounded. He's wounded, and he's trying to figure out how to get a treatment for his injuries. As he's trying to figure out and get treatment for his injuries, Frankenstein is recuperating, trying to figure out what his new plan is, because the town people are angry at him for creating this monster and letting it get loose into the town and tormenting people. There's a moment in the movie where the people discover Frankenstein, and they jump on him and they tie him into a pole. And as they tie him up to a pole, they show like the symbol of him being crucified. But then they bring him into a jail and they put him in chains. But eventually he breaks out of those chains and he goes into the woods, hiding, trying to find somebody that's not going to harm him. Earlier I mentioned loneliness was a theme in this movie that's explored very, very well. He finds this blind man who lives in this cottage, and he walks up to and then he walks behind this blind man. The blind man senses him, and the blind man cannot see him, but feels his hand and said, "You are my friend, you are hurt. I will take you in, and I will heal you, and I will feed you." And Frankenstein, the monster, is taken aback by this kind gesture of human emotion and human kindness. The blind man takes the monster into his cottage, starts feeding him, and sits him down and tells him to lay down and relax, because he's been on his feet all day. And the monster is like laying down, and then the blind man lays over Frankenstein and does a prayer and says, thank you for being my friend, for helping me in this time of loneliness, because he was yearning for someone to be there with him. And the monster, in a sense, at that moment fills that void in the blind man's life. And the monster is taken back by these emotional words the blind man says to him, as the blind man prays over him for bringing him into his life. And something you see which is so shocking, you see the monster, he starts crying. Tears come out of his eyes. The monster cries. I never thought I would ever see that. They were able to capture this human emotion from a monster created by dead body parts. He was able to elicit a human emotion of crying. And it was just well caught on camera, well illustrated, that loneliness, that humans are not meant to be lonely. It's not part of the human experience of being lonely. And the monster who feels lonely, who is being chased and who's being hunted by the townspeople, and the blind man, the old blind man who's been lonely most of his life, blind, sitting in a cottage alone playing the violin, they find each other, and in that split moment they were able to cure the refuge of loneliness. But however, the moment is broken up, and I'm not going to tell you more about that plot. I want you to find out about it when you watch it. But let's just say the monster is out on the break again, trying to find some sense of relevance. Meanwhile, Frankenstein is being contacted by his mentor, Dr. P. And Dr. P wants to create life, but he needs Frankenstein's research and studies to create life again. At first, Frankenstein is opposed to this, but Dr. P finds other nefarious ways to convince Dr. Frankenstein and creating his demand, obeying his demand. And it's pretty intense what he does. You gotta watch that part. I'm not gonna tell you that part, but I'll tell you this. They get body parts, and the evil assistant goes in and does something very crazy to get a human brain and a heart, and then suddenly the monster confronts Frankenstein again, and then Dr. Frankenstein is frightened of this monster he has created, because the last time he remembers the interaction, it wasn't good, So a bride is created for Frankenstein. Frankenstein creates the bride for the monster, and then at a moment's notice, when the bride comes to be and she's alive, Frankenstein brings his bride to life. The bride, they take the bandages off her eyes, they stand her up, and they made her look at the monster. And she looks at the monster and she screams at the top of her lungs. And the monster is taken aback, but he wonders, why have you rejected me? He holds the monster female's hand, and she screams and rejects him. And he's sad, and you see tears coming out of the monster's eyes. And at that very moment, he understands that he is meant to be lonely, and he is not meant to be happy in this world that he was created in. So he tells Frankenstein to leave with his wife, and then the whole place is destroyed with the monsters and the evil Dr. P in it. Frankenstein and his bride leave the town, never to return again. This sequel was very intense, very emotional, and it plays on a lot of different themes. 1935, it's a movie that still stands the test of time. I'm going to tell you something. These directors, these crappy directors and these studios looking for a big cash cow, they try to create their own version of Frankenstein. They try to think they're staying faithful to the book, but let's be honest, they're really not staying faithful to the book. They don't understand the simple elegance that the director showed in 1935 by, James Whale. He kept it simple, he kept it grounded in story and using colors, matte paintings and stuff like that to illustrate a scare, and these directors, these big studios today, they just don't understand, they just don't get it. They don't get it. And that's why Frankenstein from 1931 and The Bride of Frankenstein will stand the test of time, because they were made on small budgets but with big hearts and big objectives that even today's movies they can't even fill. So that's my take on The Bride of Frankenstein. Hopefully I get a chance to make my own take on Frankenstein one day for my production company. So thank you. Please tune in on Peacock to watch this movie, The Bride of Frankenstein and the original Frankenstein. Stay tuned for the third part, which is The Son of Frankenstein, 1939. So thank you for listening to this podcast, episode 35. Before I go, here's a little snippet about the movie. After recovering from injuries sustained in a mob attack upon himself and his creation, Dr. Frankenstein, Colin Clive, falls under the control of his former mentor, Dr. P, who insists the now chastened doctor resume his experiments in creating new life. Meanwhile, the monster, Boris Karloff, remains on the run from those who wish to destroy him, without understanding that his intentions are generally good, despite his lack of socialization and self-control. Socialization and self-control. Eventually, those are the two keys that end up doing the monster in. So please watch the movie The Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. Thank you for listening. Peace, love, always. One.